reefs by 2035, bag by bag. In order to receive federal funding, projects like Billy and Oyster had to prove that not only were they making the shorelines more resilient, but they were creating social resilience. That is, bringing even the largest communities together to protect their own real estate.
We want to engage communities everywhere because that's actually how you get long-standing change, right? If the community and the people that live there and work there are actively involved in stewarding their local environment.
We're lucky to live and work in New York City, where we have access to some of the freshest and the best, the widest variety of species anywhere in the world. But with that comes a responsibility of the choices that we make.
And just this summer, new legislation was introduced in both the House and Senate to fund $100 million in natural shoreline restorations through state and local governments. This is not easy work. Not only do organizations need funding and oyster shells, they face tough hurdles from local permitting issues to, Brian, would you believe, poachers.
Okay, well, first off, two things. It's great to have you on set. Good to see you again, Diana. Why is zoning an issue? Why would anybody care about oyster shells in an era of climate change to save their beach?
Because you're talking about extremely expensive real estate, bigger and bigger, more expensive houses, and guess what? Under the water, the oysters can hurt your feet if you step on them. And people actually care when they're walking out into the ocean. Is it in the right place? Is it going to bother my swimming? Is it going to, affect my real estate value because I might not step on beautiful sand?
Well, they do have these things called tides, which tend to move things around. I'm not sure if people are familiar with
Right, but people think it's going to detract from their home values, which
oyster shells.
Yeah, which is crazy because guess what's going to detract from your home value is a storm surge of about 6 or 8
Or not
feet.
having a home because it's been washed out.
Exactly.
All right, Diana, great to see you.
Thank you.
In peace. Thank you. All right. Let's find out what else besides oyster shells you're going to be talking about today. Time for this morning's top trending stories. Bertha Coombs back now, and it's another China-related story, but this time, I guess, a little funny, kind of.
Yeah,
Sorta?
a little funny, not exactly foul-mouthed, but those foul-mouthed kids. The Houston Rockets, apparently not the only American property getting scrubbed from the Chinese internet. Beijing has removed all clips, episodes, and discussions of long-running animated series South Park, which we know is an equal opportunity offender. The show recently aired an episode criticizing the way Hollywood shapes content to avoid angering China. The episode, called Banned in China, referenced Chinese work camps, distribution laws, and China's Muslim population. Show creators issued a cheeky statement reading, quote, "Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts."
They literally made a show that they knew was going to be banned in China, and they were right.
They were right.
They got it right. Every way you could offend the country,
South Park
they did.
pushes the envelope every time. They do not shy away from it. Meantime, we talked about The Irishman. We're both really looking forward to seeing that. Martin Scorsese's film is heading to Broadway. The Netflix film has been struggling to reach a distribution deal with major movie theater chains, primarily because of plans to make the film available for streaming just 3 weeks after its release. Theaters typically ask for a 90-day waiting period. Netflix is now going to screen the film at the Belasco Theater in New York City. It'll be the first time that the theater has actually hosted a movie screening, so Netflix plans on installing modern screening equipment to make the viewing experience similar to theaters. It'll run for about a month. That means that the film will be available for Oscar consideration. And that's really all that it's about, to get it into theaters in order to be able to be considered for Oscars and for the Golden Globes, which adds to that.
You got to be in the theater.
And,
until they change it.
Plus, you've got a movie with De Niro, Pacino, and basically all of these luminaries. How can you not have it up for Oscar contention?
Yeah, it's got everybody. It's like Goodfellas, but the Irish version.
Exactly. Meantime, if you're looking for a way to get rid of old Legos, the company is offering a philanthropic way to do so. The company is launching a pilot program that asks customers to send old Lego bricks to Give Back Box. That organization will clean the toys, repackage them, and send them off to Teach for America and the Boys and Girls Club of Boston. An official at Lego says the program will allow the company to be more environmentally friendly while also allowing the bricks to be played with as much as possible. They already do this with the cartridges HP does it with the cartridges, printer cartridges. It's a great idea.
So kids can go home and play with empty inkjet cartridges?
No, but you can recycle inkjet cartridges by just sending them. So I think it's a great idea to be able to send them back.
I built a giant printer with my old printer cartridges.
There you go. You can maybe build something with Legos and cartridges.
They hurt less. Bertha,
I think it's a great idea.
It's a great idea. It is a good idea. Bertha, thank you very much. All right, on deck, Hong Kong protests starting to have more of an impact on business. We'll give you those details. Plus, you've heard of driverless cars, right? Well, how about a 20,000-ton driverless ship? It's real, it's random but interesting, and it's ahead. And as we go to break, here's a look at how the chief data scientist from Neuberger Berman is using numbers to make investment decisions.
How can the markets be efficient if we're surprised every quarter? So the fact that we're surprised means the information isn't in the market. So my favorite example of this year was on January 3rd, Tim Cook said they're selling less iPhones in China. On that day, $75 billion is wiped off the market cap of Apple. Now, $75 billion is larger than the market cap of most things you can invest in, and Apple is one of the most followed stocks. And clearly, every one of those phones that's sold uses social media, has contracts, uses email, is used as a telephone. So the data is in the world. The data is not in the market.
For more investment ideas from the biggest names in business, visit deliveringalpha.com.
Whether your beauty routine is 3 steps or 50...
The biggest cat in the world was longer than a cricket bat. Think that's big? Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is an unmissable £169 million. 169 million! Now that's big.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here.
Estimated jackpot is capped at 190 million euros. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Find out what you need to do to prepare at gov.uk/Brexit.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Otto Sergey now checks for better energy deals so you don't have to. Meaning we can all sit back and relax. Can't we, Sergey? Sergey?
Hey? What?
Tell the people that we can sit back and relax.
Oh, we can sit back and relax.
Oh, don't waste energy worrying about energy. Automate it with Otto Sergey. Compare the market. Keep life simple.
Customer preferences determine alerts based on tariff type, payment type, supplier rating, and minimum annual saving of £50.
Dick's Sporting Goods CEO, playing the game, taking on the issues facing consumers and corporate America. A CNBC First on Squawk Box today.
The new industrial revolution is all powered by AI. You've done all the process improvement you can. Now you've got to find insights that humans can't find, and they exist in the data. Wind turbines are covered with sensors. Uptake software takes data derived from those sensors to make that turbine more reliably productive. Data is the world's most valuable asset. This is the future of business. I watch CNBC.
All right, time for your executive recap. All the headlines you need in about 60 seconds. Let's go. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange dropping its unsolicited bid to buy the London Stock Exchange after failing to convince LSE management to back the deal. LSE shares down about 5%, on track for their biggest one-day drop since the 2016 Brexit vote. Walgreens and Kroger announcing they will no longer sell e-cigarettes. They join a growing list of retailers making similar changes amid public scrutiny over vaping-related illness. And new numbers today on SoftBank's Masayoshi Son's pain. Mitsubishi cutting its profit estimate for SoftBank's Vision Fund by $5.5 billion just for the quarter. The firm blaming the decline in stock prices of Uber and Slack and the pulled WeWork IPO. Other analysts are making similar calls. Well, it's time now for your morning RBI, the most random but hopefully interesting thing you're going to hear all day. And do you think that autonomous cars are interesting? What about autonomous driverless trucks? Well, this one may take that conversation to an entirely new level. Japanese shipping firm NYK recently completed the first autonomous ship trip. The car carrier went from China to 2 ports in Japan. And while the driverless part was only while at sea, it didn't dock using the autonomous system. The ship was still staffed with crew, in fact. But the fact that a 20,000-ton ship sailed at sea Using no captain, only a computer may send shivers through the sea captain community. Shiver me timbers. Random, but hopefully interesting. All right, now back to the broader markets and some investment ideas just for you. Joining us is Patrick Palfrey, Senior Equity Strategist at Credit Suisse. You don't look like a senior. By the way.
I'm a junior relative to my dad.
A junior relative, but a senior position.
Yeah.
Patrick, good to see you again. All right, I got trades been going on for what, 16, 17 years now? How do we manage through this constant, everyday drip, drip, drip of trade headlines while just trying to preserve assets and make money for Credit Suisse's clients?
I mean, I think with trade, I think you need to put the conversation in a broader context. And in reality, what we're talking about is issues which matter in terms of safeguarding intellectual property, equal access to markets. And then I think there are some issues which are on the table and then get taken off the table. And I think that's where you need to sort of separate what the real conversation should be and then the issues which happen to get batted around from time to time.
What should the real conversation be right now?
Well, I mean, I think if we can honestly protect the intellectual property of the U.S. and guarantee equal access to markets, I think that's something that's worth fighting for, and that will ultimately better in the long run. If it's simply a matter of shifting soybeans from Brazil to China, I'm not necessarily sure that benefits the broader economy. Sure, local farmers will prefer that, but from a solution to the broader issue, I don't think that's it.
Okay, so in your recent note, you guys at Credit Suisse, you argued that cyclical changes to taxes may be more important than trade or economic headwinds. Please explain.
Well, I think what happened is, just taking a step back, we had the tax and spending bills that went into place following the election, and we had a ramp up in economic activity following that. So we suggest that rather the deceleration we're experiencing now is simply a reflection of the fact that we are cycling that tax and spending package rather than a material impact from the trade and tariffs. And the easy way to look at it is, what were economists expecting 18 months ago to what are they expecting now for, let's say, 2019 or 2020 growth? The answer is expectations are dead flat. So what we're seeing is a deceleration that was expected by economists because of that tax and spending bill, rather than necessarily a metastasization from the trade and tariff discussion.
But what does that mean? What do I do? Do I sell everything I own? Do I buy more stocks? What's the solution?
I think right now what's important is we've started talking about what is called a semi-recession. That is an area where the industrial data is decelerating materially, but it's not broad-based in the sense that we don't expect a economic recession. I think that's important. Investors,
what's the difference?
Well, I think, it doesn't impact teachers. It doesn't impact government workers. It only impacts what is currently about 10 to 15% of the economy. So the industrial data slows down, but yet everyone else, services, still continue to do very well. And I think that's how we can have situations where we have growth in areas like Google and Facebook, but then we have areas in the cyclical component where...
So bottom line, it sounds like what you're saying is, yes, the industrial data, the manufacturing stuff is slowing down, but you do not expect that to create a broad-based macro recession in the United States.
That's 100% correct, yes. And investors, what they want to miss is they want to miss that recession. Absent a recession, equities tend to go up. And I think there are portions which do better. I think areas which have more growth. Areas
Quickly,
which are
what
more
areas
defensive.
are going to do better and have more growth?
Technology,
20 seconds.
Communication services, those are areas where those businesses are generating their own success. Avoid anything with economic cyclicality: industrials, materials, energy, financials.
All right, technology and communication. I like that. They're generating their own success. We're going to end it. I can't speak better than that. Patrick Palfrey, thank you very much. Appreciate it. See you soon. Thank you all for watching Worldwide Exchange this fine Tuesday morning. Squawk Box begins right now.
Good morning. The conflict with China escalating. The U.S. adding more Chinese firms to its blacklist. Overnight, China suspended broadcast of NBA preseason games. No big loss. A live report from Beijing is straight ahead. Boeing backlash. The company facing a new $100 million lawsuit over its grounded 737 MAX planes, and more retailers pulling e-cigarettes from the shelf after a study linked e-cig vapor to an increased risk of cancer in mice. Tuesday, October 8th, 2019, and Squawk Box begins right now.
Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together.
Live from New York, where business never sleeps, this is Squawk Box.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC. We are live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Let's take a look at the U.S. equity futures at this hour. Yesterday was a down day for the markets, and we are indicated that direction once again this morning. Right now, Dow futures indicated down by 93 points. S&P futures off by more than 9. The NASDAQ down by about 16. There is much less optimism about the potential for anything getting done with these trade talks with China later this week. Those start taking place on Thursday. But again, ahead of that, tensions seem to have ratcheted up on both sides. We'll talk more about this in just a moment. But let's take a look at what happened overnight also in Asia with their stock markets as well. You're going to see that the Nikkei was up by about 1%. The Hang Seng up by a 0.25 percentage point, and then the Shanghai Composite up by about 0.3%. And then in Europe, where there is some active trading that's taking place this morning, you're going to see some red arrows there. DAX indicated down by about 0.7%. The CAC off by 0.6%. The FTSE is hanging in there. It's relatively flat. If you check out the Treasury market, yields there, which had come under pressure last week, look like they are a little bit weaker this morning as well. The 30 years hanging in at 2%, just above that at 2.03%. The 10 years at 1.536%, and then the 2 years at 1.444%.
Okay. The conflict with China escalating today. The U.S. adding some more companies now to its blacklist, and China scrapping the broadcast of NBA games over the Houston Rocket GM tweet, which we talked a lot about yesterday. Eunice Yoon joins us this morning with the latest on where this is all going. Eunice.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Yeah, well, it's not going to a very good place. The financial fallout over the NBA just continues for a second day. Moments ago, the Chinese tech giant Tencent, which streams NBA games online, said that it is suspending broadcasts of the games for now. These are the preseason games. And this just came a couple hours after the state broadcaster CCTV, which also has a very long relationship with the NBA, said that it was also going to halt all preseason games as well. In fact, in their statement, the CCTV said, "We are strongly dissatisfied with Commissioner Adam Silver's defense for the Houston Rockets general manager's tweet supporting the Hong Kong protesters. We believe that any speech that challenges national sovereignty," it says, "and social stability is not within the scope of freedom of speech." Now, the commissioner, Adam Silver, is in Asia. And in Tokyo, he told reporters that when he does come to China, and he's going to be visiting Shanghai next week, he's going to have some conversations with officials to try to smooth things over. Those conversations might not go over very well because there has been such a swift punishment for these comments, both with the tweet as well as from the NBA. In fact, the Chinese Basketball Association has canceled all 4 NBA games that were scheduled in China for October 19th and 20th. Just a couple minutes ago, the smartphone maker Vivo, which is a Chinese firm, said it's putting its partnership on ice for now. And this is after all day we were hearing several celebrities denouncing the NBA and saying that they were also going to suspend their relationships. And the term Houston Rockets now is no longer searchable on Alibaba's as well as JD's shopping site. So I think it just goes to show how challenging things are right now for international companies and, of course, American companies when it comes to anyone talking about Hong Kong, which is seen by Beijing as a touchy subject. And just one more thing on that. The foreign ministry today kind of gave a hint probably about how they feel about the U.S.'s involvement, or at least the NBA's comments about Hong Kong, in a statement that it said about a completely different subject, and that is the U.S. Commerce Department's decision to expand the blacklist for some of the Chinese firms because of the Muslim population in the far west. Essentially, China said the U.S. should stop interfering in Chinese affairs. In other words, they want the Trump administration and the U.S. more broadly to butt out of their business. Guys?
Hey, Eunice, very quickly, just in the last 10 minutes or so, Adam Silver has made some comments. You mentioned that he's in Asia. He's trying to take this on, and it's a delicate dance. He said, first of all, we'd like those to the NBA, connected to the NBA, to be sensitive to other people's cultures. He said, we regret that we have upset millions and millions of fans, but obviously trying to walk a fine line. He's also saying he's not apologizing for Houston general manager exercising his freedom of expression. huge issue because obviously an American league, but in China they have, I believe, double the number of fans that there are in terms of people of the United States, something like 600 million fans or more in China, and so it's obviously a huge market for them. But trying to walk a pretty fine line with some of these comments that he's coming out with this morning.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's a fine line that the NBA has to walk, and Chinese companies as well, because right after Tencent made that announcement that they were going to cut ties or suspend ties with the NBA, there was a lot of discussion online here about how Tencent had just recently inked a very huge deal to get the rights. I mean, some people were saying it's like $1.5 billion, so that hasn't been confirmed, for a 5-year deal to air NBA games. And the comment that you could see the most is that Tencent decided to choose life instead of money. And that was kind of a hint that a lot of companies, if you want to do business in China, you have to fall in line with what Beijing wants.
Right. Hey, can you also speak to the statement? We were talking a lot yesterday about Joe Tsai, who was, of course, one of the top executives, though I know he's just stepped down now from Alibaba, but of course owns the Nets here in the United States, coming out with that vociferous essay almost yesterday, argument on behalf almost seemingly of the Chinese government, and whether you think that was directed.
Oh, it's really hard to say whether or not it's directed. But yeah, there were a lot of people who said that when you look at it, he seemed as though he was saying all the right things that you would see in a foreign ministry statement. But he was, I think, trying to make the point that there is some history, and that's gone back many, many years. And the reason why China would feel so sensitive about Hong Kong and having what they would see as foreign forces, either American or British, coming in and what the Chinese would see meddling in their affairs. So he was trying to explain that, but I don't know if it necessarily went over very well, because even in China, his background is Canadian and Taiwanese. So, he's been able to benefit in a way that a lot of mainland Chinese, haven't been able to in terms of freedoms. So, his point, I think, was that freedom of speech is an important American value, but, there are some what he described as third rail issues that shouldn't be touched. But even though it's not so openly discussed online, there are a lot of people who are quite critical of his remarks as well, because he's seen as a beneficiary of an open system.
And it's so interesting because he, bought this big stake in the Nets. A large part of the reason that he was accepted as one of the owners was this idea that the league was going to benefit from his relationships in China, given his position and prominence at Alibaba. And now, and historically, the NBA has not taken foreign money, at least as a full owner of a league or of a team. And so now you're in this position. Did he clear his statement with the NBA? Is he now a prop to some degree? There are people who think that he's a prop of the Chinese government. All of a sudden, inside one of the United States' most iconic sports leagues, the whole thing is a very complicated situation.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back to what Becky, you were saying, which is that Adam Silver has to walk this fine line, because it looked as though he was trying to say that he supports any of the employees that they have speaking their mind. So it looked as though he was trying to be supportive of people who would say something that's positive about the Hong Kong protesters, or that they stand with the Hong Kong protesters, and also with Joe Tsai, that he would want Joe Tsai to be able to say what he wants.
Sounds
so
like
I thought that was
quiet.
interesting. Well,
I mean, if you didn't have money, if you didn't have money, the interests involved, it seems like a no-brainer. All of us would probably say, yeah, gosh, we sort of stand with the Hong Kong protesters. We understand what they're saying, and we're sort of behind them in their, striving for more freedom and more human rights. And it seems like such an innocuous thing to say unless you got a lot of money on the line. And then you're like, whoa, what am I doing? I got to figure out my priorities, which is why the NBA came under quite a bit of criticism. The NBA players and coaches can certainly criticize the government here in our country, but can't even, like, body language on China. It's very it's going to get worse, I think, in terms of the two sides and how they view this, Eunice. Yeah, and I don't.
And it really started, I think, with some of the. Yeah, I think it also started earlier when you saw the debate around the Hong Kong airline Cathay Pacific, because they were coming under tremendous pressure from Beijing to make decisions about the staff, people who protested, and to go after some of these people, and that sparked a discussion even within Hong Kong, like some of the American companies or other international companies in the region, as to how much influence Beijing was going to have or feel that they could have on the decisions of international companies. And so you're kind of seeing that now spread out a bit into the NBA and maybe into other companies. And it would appear that or one of the complaints that I'm hearing a lot is that Beijing appears to be trying to shape the way the outside world discusses China and China affairs in the same way that the people here have their comments censored.
It's just hard you don't want to be seen, and this is what's happening. You don't want to be seen coddling, the Communist Party of China with the Uyghurs, or how do you say it? Is it Uyghurs and internment camps and everything that we know about it? But then again, we're in Uyghurs, yeah. And then again, we're in trade talks with China, and we're deal with Saudi Arabia. So it's very. There's a lot of hypocrisy with all of our dealings, and a lot of the hypocrisy comes from that there are financial interests involved that sort of take precedence over conscience and human rights, which is just the way it is. At least we understand what we're talking about here. Anyway, we got an update, Eunice, from Hong Kong. It was another night of violence as police used tear gas and a show of force to clear protesters from the streets. 2 protesters were taken to court yesterday, charged with violating the new ban on wearing masks at rallies. Overnight, embattled leader Carrie Lam said the government has no plans to use emergency powers to introduce more new laws. She also said visitors to Hong Kong during the Golden Week holiday plunged more than 50% from a year ago, and retailers, catering, tourism, and hotels had all been hit hard. You were out yesterday. We got the Nobel Prize for Medicine yesterday, and today we got the Nobel Prize for Physics for understanding 3 guys for understanding the origins of the universe, cosmology, but also the first guy to discover an exoplanet, which is a planet outside of our solar system.
Right.
Which you would imagine now there's like 4,000 that we've discovered. I mean, they're out circling other stars. Anyway, tomorrow is chemistry, and then Thursday is literature, and there's 2 this year for literature because they didn't give one last year.
They make up for it by giving 2?
Yep. 2018 and a 2019.
Wow.
Remember Bob Dylan won one, so I'm wondering whether it's the Stones this year or something. Or
probably not, but we'll see. In the meantime, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has reportedly told British Prime Minister Boris Johnson that a Brexit deal is essentially impossible. That's according to Reuters, quoting a Downing Street source. Merkel is said to be standing firm on her position that Northern Ireland would have to remain fully aligned with the European Union. That report has sent the British pound lower in this morning's trading. You can see right now 122.36 is the latest trade. And again, the European markets, as we mentioned, have been under a little bit of pressure this morning, too. The DAX down by about 1%. Actually, those declines have picked up just in the last 10 minutes. CAC is now down by 0.8%, and the FTSE off by about 0.2%. In Italy, stocks are down by almost 1%. They're down by just over 1% in Spain. Here in the United States, losses here have accelerated a bit, too. Dow futures are now indicated down by 135 points. S&P futures down by 13, and then the NASDAQ down by 35. All of this talk, tensions with Brexit, trade talks between the Chinese and the United States, concerns about all of those things, kind of putting some impact on the markets today.
I was reading articles that Boris Johnson was going to pull a rabbit out of his hat, and they were going to get a deal before October 31st.
Look at that.
And well, now, and you see that was surprising because the pound really did sell off on Merkel's comments. Coming up, Samsung's profit dipping, but perhaps signaling a turnaround in the struggling chip market. Stocks to watch is next. As we head to break, here's a look at the biggest pre-market winners and losers, specifically in the Dow.
On the way you're slipping away, I turned my feelings on. You made me untouchable for life. Yeah, you wasn't polite.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow at TuneIn and always be in the know. From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Remind you, Thursday night football is happening this week. 8:20 p.m. Eastern is kickoff. We've got the New York Giants at the New England Patriots. Now, to find it, search NFL, favorite your team so you don't miss any of the action.
The under center on the retreat, dropping back. He's pressured. He rolls right. He throws it down the right side for an open Bolden. Catches the 5 into the end zone. Touchdown!
Make sure to favorite your team and search NFL. That way you don't miss any of the games. That's your TuneIn Sports Update.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn.
It's Liz Hernandez with your TuneIn Music News Update. Kelsey Ballerini and Halsey are doing a CMT Crossroads together, and not surprising since Kelsey posted clips of them doing karaoke. They're taping the episode on October 11th, and it'll air early next year. Speaking of country collaborations, Tim McGraw posted a video on Instagram of what looks like him and Shy Carter rehearsing in an empty arena. They're on stage performing their new song, Way Down. To hear music from Kelsey Ballerini and Tim McGraw, search Country Roads on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. One stock to watch right now. Take a look at Samsung, because it said it expects third quarter profit to now fall more than 50%. That would be a plunge of 50%, but that would still beat forecasts, if you believe that, thanks to strong sales of the new Galaxy Note 10 smartphone. So all things are relatives, and they're saying that would offset the slump in its memory chip business. But a 50% drop, that you would think that would be a meaningful situation, and yet they beat on the other side. It's sort of, you look at that chart, it's sort of hard to make heads or tails of what's going on here.
Right. All right, let's get to the markets. U.S. equity futures near the lows of the morning. Joining us now is Kevin Mon. He's president and chief investment officer of Hennian & Walsh Asset Management. Chris Retzler is portfolio manager at Needham Growth Fund. And both of you really highlight it's sort of the same three issues that we're talking about, Kevin, and that trade issues, number one. You're worried about what the minutes say and the Fed, whatever that is, and then how earnings play out, whether we have an earnings recession or at least slowing growth. Yeah. So those are the three. Are there anything? Does the NBA factor in any of this? Are those the only three things we need to be thinking about?
Look, I think what's driving volatility out there's a lot of the trade disputes that continue to go, and I think we need to have a better deal than just kind of a quick deal. And then earnings season
for much of either of them.
No, and earnings season's about to kick off. Everybody always resets their earnings so they can beat and feel good about themselves. But I think the discussion of what's the forecast looking forward, and I kind of think that the rest of the year is going to be washed out. It's not going to be too exciting. And where investor attention is going to be pushed is to 2020. And I think the bar has been set a little bit lower. We've seen some weaker quarters here in the last couple, which sets up probably for some reacceleration next year, which is where we see the hope. But we still see that volatility is going to be here probably through the remainder of the year. And people remember what happened last year. So there's some concern. But now we have the Fed behind us as opposed to in front of us fighting the market. So that's one good thing that's changed. But there's certainly a lot of uncertainty. And, we're a bit cautious out there right now.
Yeah, I think earnings are always important, but they're particularly important in this third quarter. Year over year, it's forecasted to contract around 4%. But importantly, revenues are forecasted to increase 4% year over year. And that validates the strength of the U.S. consumer. Remembering that third quarter of last year, we had 20% year over year earnings growth. So it shouldn't be too surprising that we're slowing. But if revenues continue to grow, that shows the U.S. consumer is healthy. That could lead into what I believe will be a record holiday shopping season.
I mean, really seems like, well, we're down 165 now. Things have been getting worse. But I'm not saying that things can't happen, but we've been buffeted back and forth so many times by things are getting, there's positives, there's negatives, there's positive, there's negative. And then the Fed, they're probably going to cut, but the wild card really is what happens with earnings and then the outlook from the companies, right?
Look,
that's going to be the nearest data point. So would you